topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Connected Table Live. We're your hosts, Melanie Young and David Ransom, your insatiably curious culinary couple. We travel the world to bring you the amazing people and places we visit and meet anywhere we go. And today we're broadcasting live from home base, New Orleans. And we're raising a glass. Cheers, because this is going to be a spirited discussion with someone we've been trying to get on this show for a really long time. And now it seems like the best time of all to have her. We're talking about Charlotte Voisey, whose lengthy career working in spirits has hit every possible high note and brought her legions of admirers, from industry professionals to fans who have seen her on shows like Iron Chef America and The Proper Pour. She is renowned and credited for really helping define how spirits brands connect with the hospitality industry. And a lot of this was done for nearly 2 decades when she was serving as global ambassador for William Grant & Sons, overseeing over 100 people and traveling the world, which is why we could never get her on this show. However, she has made this bold, exciting career change. And in January of 2025, stepped up to become the executive director of the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation. Now, if you follow the industry, you know that Tales of the Cocktail is the premier gathering of bar and spirits industry professionals from around the world. And it takes place here in New Orleans. The 23rd edition is taking place July 20 to 25, 2025. Of course, we'll be there with our spirited swizzle sticks. These are from Muses, Mardi Gras Muses, little red high heels. And we are so excited to be able to sit down with Charlotte to have a nice, proper discussion. So Charlotte Voisey, welcome to the Connected Table.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful, warm welcome. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Don't you love these? Are high-heeled, red high-heeled swizzle sticks from Muses from Mardi Gras.
I need me one of those too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We may have a couple extra.
Great.
Yeah.
Although if something tells me you're not lacking in barware in your house.
There is that. Yeah.
That's very true.
It's very true.
Charlotte, we're very excited to have you on the show. I know I interviewed you about 15 years ago for a column that I was writing at the time. And
wow.
We've obviously kept in, I know it's been that long.
You had red hair then.
I did. And but in the meantime, we've always kept in touch. We've seen you at Tales. We've seen you in New York. We've seen you in Aspen, various places. But I want to kind of take it back and we want to tell our listeners, have you tell them about you. So why don't you tell us where you were born, raised? You were raised in London, but tell us about your background and where you're from and how you got into the spirits business.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And thanks again for having me on. Super excited to talk with both of you today. So we're taking it back to the beginning, huh? Great story. It starts at the beginning. So yes, I was born just outside of London, grew up in the UK with my parents, obviously, and my one sister. I went to university from a young age there. Didn't really ever know what I wanted to do for a career, right? You know, some people kind of know exactly what they want to do. If you asked me when I was 5 years old, I probably would have told you that I wanted to be like a firefighter or Superman or something like that, but obviously not a serious answer. So went to university to kind of keep my options open. And I think one of the things I value so much from my upbringing was my parents' love of travel. Being in Europe obviously is a luxury that it's quite easy and inexpensive to travel to different countries and be exposed to different cultures. So that's something that I think kind of set me on the path that I've been so lucky to explore through my career. But yes, really enjoyed that from a childhood perspective for sure.
So how did you get into bartending? Were you like doing it you were in college to earn money, or was it something that you were doing because you got out and you were like, I don't know what I want to do with my life? Or did you decide was there a drink that made you say, I want to be in this business?
Well, the way I got into the industry, again, very fortunate. I've had a lot of like right place, right time moments, I like to say, in the industry. So back in the UK, I went to university in Brighton and studied international hospitality management. So I actually kind of intended to fall into this industry from a certain aspect. But the reason I chose the course that I did is they offered a year in industry, meaning for 1 year you didn't go to classes, you actually worked and got life experience with a company somewhere in hospitality. And the company I joined was called My Kind of Town Restaurants. And it actually, if you look it up, quite a few great people in hospitality came from there. So London based, but with franchises all over the world. So I joined them and I had 6 months in London, 6 months in Barcelona. When I graduated, I was in Argentina with them for 2 years, having the most fabulous time. And then I still remember to this day when I got the call saying, we actually want you to come home now. We want you to come back to London because we're about to open a classic cocktail bar called Apartment 195 in Chelsea in London, and we want you to head it up. And that was, as much as I didn't want to leave Buenos Aires at the time, because it's such a fabulous place to live, made the decision to go back to London. And that's where the cocktail part of my career really started. And again, right place, right time. It was a very interesting time in London. It was when the London cocktail scene was starting to take off, when cocktail competitions were starting. You know, Dale DeGroff would come over and work with Jonathan Downey on the Match Group. It was a really kind of intimate but exciting time in the London cocktail scene. And I was front and center of that. So I'm very fortunate to get my start in the industry in that way.
You rode the wave. You know, I'm curious, how many languages do you speak since you've lived all over the world? Are you multilingual or?
Mostly fluent in Spanish, lacking a little bit of practice these days. And I speak French too, having learned at school, and a little bit of sort of German and other European languages. But again, definitely helps when you sort of travel as a child. And in the UK, I think it's a little different. We're exposed to quite a few languages at school.
Yeah, I think languages are great. So, you know, was there, you worked at a proper, I love the word proper, London bar, proper English breakfast. It's always proper discussion with Charlotte Voisey. What was that proper cocktail that you just loved and learned to master that you still think is quintessential? I'm actually curious, quintessential London cocktail versus a quintessential American cocktail.
Yeah, gosh, let's see. Well, it would have to have been with gin, right? Because that's the quintessential British spirit and the one I fell in love with mostly. I think that's, so inspiring for bartenders because of the nature of botanicals and the plethora of ingredients that gin goes with. So it was probably one of those early drinks. Just trying to think now, one of the men. So the bar that I mentioned, Apartment 195, was really the first serious cocktail bar I worked in. So that's where I kind of learnt that there was a way to do drinks properly, to use that word again, that there was actually methodology and there was culture and there was a history that the modern drinks that we kind of knew at that time, and this was the early 2000s, were actually rooted in the classics. Like you could take any drink of that era and actually dial it back and find that sort of family tree of the drink. And, oh, this is actually a riff on a mojito or a Manhattan or an old fashioned or a gin martini. So that was probably sort of my education that I valued most from my time at Apartment 105.
That's really interesting because, you know, I rode the wave in the culinary world, which kind of was maybe 15 years before the cocktail revolution. There was the American culinary revolution. And then all of a sudden living in New York, you had, you know, all these amazing bars popping up that became like status symbols to go to. People were rushing to them, whether, you know, it was PDT or, I mean, there was always the staples. And then all of a sudden, you know, I would dine out with restaurant critics, right? Because at the time I was running the James Beard Award, and we would just dive in and start having dinner and some wine. And then all of a sudden we'd all be like, no, we have to start with a proper cocktail. And suddenly we're sipping each other's cocktails. It kind of evolved in that time. It's interesting. Yeah. Cocktails really rose up to be part of the menu.
For sure. And I think, you know, we have a lot to thank. We have the culinary world to thank a lot for sort of lead-in mixology, if you will, because flavors, ingredients, style, but also just the level of care that chefs would pay not only to execution of their dishes, but sourcing of ingredients, right? Understanding where things came from, how they're made. I think that mixology always sort of trailed gastronomy, like you said, sort of 15 years or so. So we learned a lot from that. But you're right. I mean, I remember those years. I came over to the US then in 2006. So like the middle of that decade was so exciting, especially in New York where I lived. Those iconic bars that are now kind of almost timeless, right? They're sort of milestones in the evolution of cocktail culture. But it was so exciting back then, and because I felt like people, bartenders as well as guests, were discovering a lot of this cocktail culture for the first time, and it was really eye-opening. It felt very creative. It was a real good time. Lots of fun too.
It certainly was. I think we all rode that wave, and
Yeah.
and we still enjoy it to this day, obviously.
And we're new waves now.
Yeah, and we're new waves now.
Like your career. I mean, you made you listen, whenever we saw you at Tales, you were always orchestrating these amazing parties for William Grant and Son and notably Hendrick's Gin.
Yeah.
And, I think I personally learned more about that gin because of you.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, we
The rose and the cucumber. And, I learned a lot because you did a lot of educational programs as well as parties. Because listen, Tales of the Cocktail is not all about parties. It's about learning and career development and education and networking and supporting each other, because it is the hospitality industry, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a balance of all of those things. Yes, the educational seminars are super important. You get the unique opportunity to sit down and listen to the world's experts on all sorts of niche topics that you can't get anywhere else. You get to taste spirits that perhaps were limited editions or historic or sort of the only bottle left in the world. Like literally, that's the stuff of Tales, right? As much as what's new and what's happening and what's launching. For me, the parties were always that moment for everyone to just relax a little, come together and chat, right? Yes, against some crazy, fun, exciting backdrops, but it's the connection at Tales that is where the magic happens. And it's those conversations you don't plan, but happen spontaneously with people you've seen on social media or read about or never met before, but Tales brings people together. And I know that's how we've kept our friendship alive and kept in touch over the years.
Well, that is certainly true. And, that kind of brings us to where you are now as well. You've recently, just earlier this year, took on the executive director role at the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation.
Yes.
To start the next chapter of your career. Why don't you tell us about how that came about and what it entails for you?
And what the foundation is, because it's a foundation, which means it has a important nonprofit mission.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you for raising that, because I think a lot of people in the industry have heard of Tales. They know it's this fun week in July in New Orleans, great city, lots going on, but not everybody understands the full scope of the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation. It's really twofold, right? It is this flagpole, a wonderful event that we all love in July in New Orleans, but it's also a 365-day a year effort to educate, advance, and support the global drinks industry, which is quite a lofty mission, right? And entails an awful lot of work. But really, Tales is there to support bartenders, bar owners, every sort of member of our industry through providing the education and the resources that are needed, but moreover to kind of provide this platform for people to come together, to speak out, to share ideas and resources, and to be celebrated through our Spirited Awards program, of course, which is a big part of Tales of the Cocktail. So everything kind of comes together on that platform that is Tales. It is non-for-profit, so everything that we're doing is so that we can put back into the industry. That's truly our mission. And it's wonderful to see when we can make things happen for people, whether it's literally through our scholarship program, which this year is dedicated to Chris Patino, who we love and obviously miss terribly. Chris made wonderful contributions to Tales of the Cocktail over the years, or the grants programs that we've done in the past. So it's wonderful to be able to literally give back. But again, anytime that Tales of the Cocktail brings people together, is so inspiring. And I think for me, that was the impetus for me to take the decision to move over to Tales of the Cocktail. I just spent 18 wonderful, exciting, dream-like years, literally, with the William Grant and Sons, with Hendrix, traveling the world, working with just the most beautiful of people. And I didn't want to leave the industry, but it was time for a change. And the executive director of Tales of the Cocktail Foundation gave me the opportunity to stay in the industry I love, but to give back, perhaps in a more meaningful way, and to leverage my network, which is quite large now, of course, after that amount of time, but also my skills and experience and insight. I could actually leverage that and perhaps do more good in a more neutral role with a broader scope and access to people. So that was really the impetus behind the decision to make the change. And I'm really looking forward to being able to do that over the coming years.
You know, I'm curious. First of all, every time we would leave a tale, David, I want Charlotte's budget, particularly for her wardrobe, because you were always immaculate. I was like, I want your travel budget, I want your entertaining budget, because I know you had a big corporate. I mean, you know, you always were like on cue and point. What is a day in the life of Charlotte Voisey? How is it different now when you were working in a big corporate environment, managing over 100 people with big budgets, and now you're moving into nonprofit? It's You're also managing a huge network, but it's different in the nonprofit world. What is a day in the life different? How is it different? And what are you learning from this experience?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is very different going from corporate to non-for-profit. If anyone out there has done it, you'll understand it's a very different mindset, first of all, right? Expectations are different. The way that things have to happen is very different. Budgets are also very different, to speak candidly. But I'm enjoying the learning process. I find it an exciting challenge to kind of almost redirect the way I approach problems and find solutions. And a lot of it is through perhaps persuasion and influence, but to truly find the way that goals align. Because if we can align goals between people or companies, brands, organizations, the industry at large, that's where everything can come together and make successful outcomes. So I think my new challenge is to think, almost approach problems or issues or opportunities in a very different way, so that sort of everyone can hopefully be a winner. Because that's sort of the main way that non-for-profits can achieve their missions.
Well, you deal with numbers differently, and obviously in the corporate world, you're selling, you're marketing, and you're selling, and and that's the end result. And you're also helping in their social responsibility. In nonprofit, you are giving. There is so much accountability in nonprofit, having worked in it, and you have to really your dots and T's and whatever have to be really carefully orchestrated. So that's a big, and you're always looking for more money. So you were a sponsor, and now you're cultivating sponsors, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm still on that learning journey. But I think one of the reasons that this was a great fit for me is that I understand the brand mindset. I understand sort of the larger corporate organizations of our industry and what they need from organizations like Tales. So I've sort of been on the other side a little bit, which in some regards sets me up to be able to advise and anticipate their needs and better fulfill, better find the way that we can align objectives so that we're all successful.
I think this is a great segue to talk about Tales 25, and we never say next week or this week because this is evergreen content. So 2025 Tales has a theme.
Yes.
It's evolve. It's a great big word, evolve. What does it mean in the context of the theme of Tales and the direction you want to see the industry go?
Yeah, so it's evolve, right? It's not flip the table and change everything at once. And in some regards, you could argue that evolve fits Tales every year because our content, what's on at Tales, is always evolving, right? Every year, seminars are different, the tastings are different, the parties mix things up depending on priorities and trends. But really, I think evolve was our opportunity to remind the industry that things are constantly changing. And while Tales happens every year, it's almost that annual check-in to see how the industry has been evolving. Tails, as a thought leader in the industry, has the opportunity to anticipate how things are evolving and get ahead of those so that the education offered is timely, is relevant, and is useful, right? Because if our mission is to advance, educate, support, we want to make sure that when people spend a lot of time and money come into Tails, that is recognized and valued, and that they get that return on investment or return on the time spent. So evolve to us means continuously checking ourselves and making sure that what's on offer at Tails to the Cocktail is relevant and timely and useful. And it's not lost on me that evolve for me personally is a wonderful theme this year, because after 18 years doing one thing that I love dearly, I'm now evolving myself into a very different landscape, which is incredibly exciting.
You know, everybody needs to do that. And in fact,
Agreed.
when we went to the Tales of the Cocktail kickoff at the Ritz-Carlton, where it's taking place, gorgeous hotel, I said to one of the board members, I love the theme. Love, love, love it. I think the industry does need to always look evolved, because working behind the bar, and you know this, or working as an ambassador, there is a, excuse the pun, shelf life, because you do, I hate to say this, your body can't take that pace all the time. It's the same in the kitchen, same in PR. Helping industry professionals evolve into that next chapter. We're seeing it as all the industries we work in mature, or maybe we're just maturing, but you've got to evolve. And I said, I think this is a great opportunity at 23 years for Tales of the Cocktail to start thinking about helping industry professionals evolve into the next chapter so they still remain vibrant and relevant and connected, but in different ways, much like you're doing. So what are some examples of what programs you have this year that are underscoring that?
Yeah, that's a great insight. It's not just about evolving trends. It's how we all evolve throughout our careers and have different things to offer and different needs, right? So I think 2 of our seminar tracks this year, we have one called Beyond the Bar, which focuses on wellness, right? And in that, we have conversations around sort of longevity. So if you love this as a career, how do you keep yourself sort of safe and happy and well, physically and mentally fit in order to enjoy this industry, not just survive the industry? People often talk about, how do you get by? It's like, no, we should be setting people up for success to thrive and really enjoy, because our industry relies so much on mentorship that we need great people to be role models and mentor and inspire next generation. So that track of seminars and networking opportunities is on the Tails agenda, is really important. And then the second one I would call out in this space is the business track. A lot of that is, just tangible, tactical business advice if you are setting up a new company, opening a bar. But it's also things around HR and recruitment. It's also about how to explore the options that are now available in the industry, right? It used to be perhaps bartender, bar owner, or sort of get out and look for something else. But I've been fortunate to sort of be one of the people that's been able to sort of blaze a trail and sort of find, make, create, curate a wonderful career in this industry. And now it's there are more options than ever before. So it's making sure that people are aware of those options, so that if they're coming in as a younger bartender, which a lot of our attendees are on the younger side, they're coming in with options, and they know that this can be for the long term. And then if they want to stay in beverage for the long term, taking care of themselves is a really integral part of that. So it's something we take really seriously.
Yeah,
it is, and it's a great concept and a great thing to do, because it is a punishing business in a lot of ways. It really can be. You work long hours, you work hard. Obviously, there's the temptation of alcohol in front of you every day as well.
Camaraderie, you want to go with your pals after
but it's
work.
also a very rewarding business as well. To be able to keep all of that in mind and move forward at a pace that's comfortable for you, I think is a key descriptor for this.
Yeah, I even like financial wellness, because there's all this stuff going on with tips and taxes and stuff, and everything's changing. A lot of these young kids are making a lot of money and getting real famous, and it's much like sports. They make a lot of money, they're on TV, they get famous, and then they blow it all. And learning how to manage this sudden change in stature and financial wellness is important too, because you want to think long term.
Yep. Yeah, we do have a seminar this year again on financial wellness and what that means, again, specifically for the hospitality industry. And you're right, there's sort of, new different topics and patterns that emerge every year specific to bartenders that can be addressed by those who have perhaps lived through it, or financial professionals who have just great advice that applies to everyone. But I think the key in understanding sort of one's own path through this industry and longevity is to truly understand yourself and be true to what you need in order to survive. There's a lot of peer pressure out there. You've said, David, there's, a lot of sort of temptations that some people are fine with, others it's a little more dangerous or more precarious for. So it's really about knowing what you need, understanding your parameters first, and sticking to those and not being pressured to sort of let those go, because you're just letting yourself down.
Yeah,
Agreed.
really, really important.
And knowing when to step back if you need to.
Yeah, and that's perfectly okay to step back.
Of course.
It really is. I think that's important. With the pressure of social media now, everybody feels like they always have to be on.
Yeah.
And it's okay to take a step back. So what are, last year we attended Tails, and I was kind of, I do little tracks. I was really into the no and low alcohol. I mean, I was really following that because we're getting bombarded with beverages. And I think it's a great development for the people who cannot or do not choose to imbibe alcohol. And I know that's continuing. Now, what are some other in the programming and just in general ongoing developments that you're seeing that are really significant, that are here to stay versus trends?
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. And I think, that sort of shifts at each year. But a lot of people are talking about consumption shifting, right? Different patterns, the things that people are choosing to drink, when and why and how much and how often. This idea, perhaps, on the one hand, of people drinking less but drinking better, and reflecting that for this year, for the first time, we've organized a luxury summit for the Tales of the Cocktail on Monday, which will be looking at that sector specifically and how brands are performing, and if it's different to the industry at large, what are the opportunities, how spirit brands behave slightly differently, perhaps with the higher net worth consumer versus the sort of larger market base. And we're also seeing, an absolute continued explosion in the non-alcoholic space. And it's interesting because it's not necessarily an either or. We're hearing and seeing and understanding that some younger generations are choosing to sometimes drink alcohol and sometimes drink non-alcoholic cocktails, potentially even in the same evening, in the same bar visit. So making sure that bartenders are set up to understand, just as they know spirits, what are the non-alcoholic offerings and how do you create cocktails with a non-alcoholic spirit, which sometimes can be more challenging because it's not what we're used to. So Tales has a really important role in, again, setting the stage, providing the platform, making sure the right experts are in the room to share that information and train up the next generation.
I attended a really good seminar on that topic, and also how to create a alcohol free. Don't use certain words like mocktail. No,
not allowed.
And we actually had Hilary Scheinbaum after that to talk about her journey, and it was very popular podcast because there is a lot of interest in it. Because again, hospitality is the word. It's about hospitality, and hospitality is to make everybody feel comfortable and welcome, no matter what their background or preference is, right?
And part of that is also not only the offering, which I think we've done a great job at progressing in recent years, but it's also around as a culture, right? Do we need to address some of the stigmas around not drinking? I don't drink as often these days at all anymore. And sometimes if I'm drinking like a nice Pellegrino or something, and you sort of go to cheers with the group, there is still that stigma that it's unlucky to cheers with water. And little things like this can just sort of jar on someone if they've chosen not to drink, because it sort of sets you outside of the group. And things like that, I think we need to just do a bit more work on, be more mindful of, just so that if people are not drinking for whatever reason, and that reason is theirs, then they're still part of that group. They're still out and about and having fun and enjoying. So progress is a journey. I think we're still on the journey of just understanding truly how to integrate that into the larger industry. But that's natural, and it's all part of the evolution.
It's so true. I think it's so interesting because I was just reading this really great book, Stu Zucchini, about Italian nibbles. And they talked about etiquette, and they said, never toast with water. I'm like, really?
Right.
Like, what if you're not drinking?
Yeah, you're excluded from the well wishes. Like, I understand it has like a bit of a historic sort of place and it's cultural, but it can make someone feel excluded. And hospitality, to your point, is about making people feel welcome.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs. I never call it the bar industry. I call it the hospitality industry. To me, it's
Nice.
all encompassing,
Yeah.
and not segmenting in
Right.
this. And I think that's really, really important. Anything changing in the Spirit Awards, which is the Spirited Awards, which came a little bit later than the founding of Tales, and you received one yourself in I think 2010, and then chaired it from 2016 on. What's happening there?
Yeah, so again, each year the Spirited Awards, which we like to think is the Oscars of our sector of the hospitality industry, is it again reflects each year, right? One of the things I've loved to see since I became chair in 2016, as you've mentioned, is the growing global nature truly of the Spirited Awards. So the categories are US and international. And I think probably 10, 15 years ago, you'll both remember that it was kind of New York, London dominated, right? Which perhaps did reflect the industry at the time. But now when you look through the regional nominees and the top 10s and even the top 4s and the winners that eventually come out of the Spirited Awards, the geographical mix is as it should be, right? It's diverse. It's the main cities, it's the smaller markets, it's every region of the world is kind of represented and celebrated. And I think that's a really important part of how the Spirited Awards continues to grow and be representative of more and more of the industry at large. My dream is that every bartender feels like Tales exists for them in some capacity. And the idea that striving to be considered for a Spirited Award is attainable for a lot more bartenders than currently. It is one of those pathways that we're on with the awards. It's my favorite night of the week. I love it. People get dressed up, have fun, and we get to celebrate our peers, the best of the best. It's a wonderful event.
Well, from what I've noticed, people seem to get dressed up at every event. I've never seen so much fashion on parade. There should be the whole fashion aspect of it is amazing these days. It's just that you just a little more sparkle for the Spirit Awards. And yes, it is important to have something for people to attain. I mean, I remember when I started the James Spirit Awards and there was nothing like that. And suddenly it was like, oh my God, people actually want to recognize us and honor us. I mean, I'm just a cook. I remember Andre Soltner going, I'm just a cook. You want to recognize me? What? And now look where we are. There's awards, there's TV shows. You've had shows. There's some people consult on movies now, and some people have contracts with fashion lines. It's all over the place.
It is, but it's so important. And I think, certainly, Melanie, your early work was so inspiring and so important as a contribution to how the hospitality industry at large has grown. Because those things, even if people don't directly participate, it's something to strive for. It's a goal to reach for. It's the moon to shoot for and you land in the stars, so be it. But that's still an incredibly important part of the industry, especially that's how we attract young talent, right? Thinking, wow, that could be me. So I think these programs are really important and go well beyond the people that are lucky enough to be in the room that night.
Well, let's face it. Growing up, my context when I was younger about bartenders was one I wasn't allowed to go because I was young. But there was Joe the bartender who was usually drunk on. Joe the bartender was on some TV show, and then there was Cheers.
Yes.
And that was it. Cheers and Joe the bartender.
And all they drank on Cheers was beer.
And all they drank is beer. And everybody seemed to get drunk at the end of the night, falling off their stools. So we've come a long way from or we were watching a show, or there was people mixing cocktails, at the Moroccan Club Morocco. We were watching some Elvis Presley show last night. And they were making like fancy cocktails, at the bars, and people were all dressed up. Those were the context we knew growing up, but nobody knew the bartender's name.
Right. Yeah.
Until then one day it was like, there's Dale DeGroff. We have to go to the Rainbow Room, right?
Yeah. And, Dale's story is so important. Everything changed then. And actually one of the seminars this year, Dale's coming back with Joe Baum's son and daughter, I believe, if I've got that correct. and they're going to tell that story. And we were
Oh.
so delighted to see the seminar come through, because there is a portion now of bartenders coming through the industry that haven't heard this story, and certainly haven't heard it from Dale himself. So really excited. And that's again, that beautiful mix of like the generations coming together and exchanging information, and the you know, the ask out to Dale was like, tell your story, but let's also make it relevant to today's younger bartender. You know, like, what do I learn from this story? So it's really exciting.
I had the great privilege of working with Joe Baum at Rainbow Room.
Really?
My office was somewhere over the rainbow to start Restaurant Week for the city of New York, and Dale was working the bar at the beautiful lounge, and he was there in that wonderful uniform. And
Yep.
I had such great
The red
memories of that
jacket,
time.
exactly.
Joe had his regular seat every night, and right after work he'd sit there with his cigarette bumping, because he could smoke, nobody else could, and he'd have his cocktail. I forgot what it is, but I'm going to go to that because I'm going to ask Dale about that, because nobody knows who Joe Baum was, and he was the impresario of hospitality.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, thanks to Dale, thanks to Joe, we have Dale, right? And thanks to Dale, we all have this. We have everything. We have these beautiful careers and inspiration. So what a wonderful era. Yeah, it's incredible to, you know, live through this evolution of the cocktail sort of renaissance, as we call it. Things are very different these days, but I do think it's important to know where we've come from as an industry and understand who helped pave the way, and just appreciate sort of the classics, the history, so we can innovate from here onwards.
Well, you know, and historically, bars were part of boarding houses and places people would gather. I mean, you know, for anyone coming to Tales or visiting New Orleans, there's like 4 amazing museums that really pay homage to cocktails. There's the Dale helped start the Museum of the American Cocktail, which is in the Southern Food and Beverage Museum. There's the fabulous Sazerac House, which gets into the history of the Sazerac and pre and post Prohibition. I said that right. New Orleans. There's the Pharmacy Museum, which really deeps into the medicinal. And then there's a newer one called View New Orleans, which is near the, it's newer, and it's got this great cafe bar. You can go up to the bar, and literally there are screens where bartenders come alive and tell the story of specific cocktails that are signature to New Orleans and the history. And it's near the Four Seasons. It's fabulous.
Great. Yeah, I've not heard of that one. I'll have to make time to check it out while I'm in town for Tales. That sounds great.
Yeah, it is. And we're going to pop those up on the connected table. But I think they're just so interesting because, you know, they say New Orleans is the birthplace of the cocktail. I don't know if that's true or not, but it has certainly a big part of history in it.
It certainly embraced the cocktail.
It certainly has a claim. It had a claim there for a while. I think a lot of us kind of hoped that it would be true, but I think David Wondrich came along and proved us all wrong. However, we, as he tends to do, we do know that, it was a very important early home of cocktails, right? And gave birth to not only some signature drinks that we still know and love, but, you know, just the early ways of bartending, one of the early places to get ice sort of shipped down from the Northeast, and how to incorporate ice in cocktails because, of course, the weather down there is always so warm. But things like that, you know, in the early days, New Orleans had a massive role to play in how we drink cocktails today, for sure. Love that.
You know, so let's talk a little bit about Charlotte. So I pulled something out. We're going to like, I pulled out one of the most unusual things in our bar. You know, people send us stuff, we travel. And this one is one of our friends, John Szabo, a wine writer, hooked us onto Santa Maria Novella in Florence, which is this historic place that makes, you know, perfumes and 1,000 roses in the tonic. And I bought it, but they have an Amaro room.
Oh, really?
In the back. And this one is the Elixir de Edinburgh, like Edinburgh. I forgot what it was, but we bought it. And it even comes with a bracelet.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, is that somebody else's bracelet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It doesn't come with a bracelet.
That's your one, Melanie.
Well, I'd like to know whose bracelet this is. Anyway, this is like a secret little find in Florence, Italy, near the train station. And you don't know about it, but you can go in there. We tasted every single one of them. So this is like our little secret find from Florence. Now, what do you have that you may not? And it doesn't have to be a product. It could be like a bar tool.
Oh, wow. Well, no, that's beautiful. I don't know if I can compete with that. I'm just going to have a little look on my shelves. It does actually remind me of a quick story. I went to Naples for the first time last year. just before Tales, actually doing some research on olives, which was my seminar last year at Tales of the Cocktail. And I'd heard about this bar called L'Antiquario in Naples, which is one of their best cocktail bars. It's actually been around for a while. I want to say almost 10 years. So, of course, we made plans to stop in there. It's a beautiful cocktail bar, quite classic. But on the menu, they had, I forget exactly how it's worded. It was Negroni, and it either said something like trio or carousel. And I thought, well, that needs to be ordered. So we ordered the Negroni, and there was a darling little miniature carousel that's placed in front of me that rotates. And of course, it brings me back to the Hotel Monteleone, but it rotates, and it's got 3 sort of petite Negronis in the carousel, and it just continuously sort of swirls in front of you, and they're all slightly different variations of the classic Negroni. But I just thought that was adorable. So the Italians know how to do things nicely, don't they?
Well,
Yes, they
they do. I just have one word for Italy right now: spritz. So we've been to Italy 5 times this year, and it's just, I'd like to have stock in Aperol and Campari. They have so much of it everywhere. But you know what I like? You spritz everywhere, and it was so hot we were spritzing all over the place because we were, as I said, we were schwitzing, so we had to spritz because we were doing a Trastevere tour, and we were so hot in Rome. It was like this heat wave. It was like 1,000 degrees, right? So we sat down, and I actually like, is it Cynar? Cynar spritzes. Cynar. I like that spritz. Kind of different, right?
Yeah, a little drier, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, no, spritzes are on fire, and that's another example of something that comes from a classic serve, right? But then it's almost turned into a category of drinks. It's turned almost into an occasion, right? It's like, if it's in a wine glass and it's got something bubbly on it, it's a spritz, which I'm not mad at, right? Because there are many beautiful variations of a spritz. And Aperol, I think, do just fine on that trend.
Just fine. They do just fine. I'm looking for new spritzes. I'd like to have I'd like to do a spritz seminar. I love spritz, but I want to try other things. I want to spritz other things. I did a Amaro spritz here because we had a lot of Amaro on the back. We're spritzing anything we have in the cellar right now.
That's nice. I also love like a rosé vermouth spritz. That's a nice one. Again,
that's a good one.
Lower alcohol, nice in the summer, obviously. Beautiful color, looks great. So that's another one to try. But yeah, spritzing all over the place is definitely still a trend. And I think it helps with that sort of no low trend as well. That's not a trend. It's part of the bar now.
And the other one that we see all the time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, espresso martini. Now, I actually never had an espresso martini because the idea was weird to me, but then I had it at this Galatoire's lunch at Tales of the Cocktail last year. And I was like, this is really good. What took you so long?
I know. They are. It's like the worst idea ever, right? You're like, do I really need
what's this?
Do I really need a shot of espresso in my cocktail right now? But they are so good. And it's kind of trailed the Negroni in that there are so many variations now, and it doesn't matter what spirit you can imagine. You can get an espresso martini made with it, even though obviously the classic is with vodka, as created by legendary UK bartender Dick Bradshaw back in the late 80s, late 90s. So another cocktail that's going crazy now, but has strong credibility in the bartender community. And not everybody knows that. So
it's so interesting. You should have a board game. Who created this drink?
Oh, yeah.
It'd be like Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Bar Jeopardy.
Yeah,
more like Trivial Pursuit, I think.
I think that'd be like, I don't know. It could be Jeopardy, because it would be really fun because there's so many like the origins of the drink. Is this Italian? Yep. That would be really, really fun.
It would be a fun way to do like sneak in education, right? For younger bartenders and do like a game show at Tales of the Cocktail. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be really, really fun.
Okay, put it on the list.
Yeah, put it on the list. There's always something.
Well, you obviously have a lot of options ahead of you.
Yeah, exactly.
As the new executive director,
we always have to keep it fresh, right? Because you got to keep everybody coming down here. Because it's like it's also great for the city of New Orleans. I mean, July, it's dead here. I mean, I want it to be alive here, but it's really quiet. So we're excited to see, a convivium of people coming down to support our industry and our bars and restaurants. They were like, please come in, right?
I mean, it's a really important part of why Tales is still in New Orleans and it's not going anywhere, and why it remains in July. Occasionally, often I get that question, especially from international sort of guests, like, why on earth do you do it when it's so damn hot down there? But of course, it's a really important economic injection, right, to the city. And New Orleans has given Tales of the Cocktail so much. It's not lost on us that people come to Tales, yes, for Tales of the Cocktail and what they need to do and what they want to learn, but also to enjoy the city of New Orleans. So I think it's only right that Tales of the Cocktail in turn can give back to New Orleans in as broad a sense as possible, not just to the local bartenders, but the local economy, hotels, restaurants, bars, tourism at large. It's a really important part of what the foundation stands for.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it's in July, because we could use the infusion of activity and economy. And there's plenty of pools you can go to. There's almost every hotel with a pool now rents a pool out.
That's right.
So anybody can go take a dip and a sip.
Yep, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, it's set up well. But yeah, supporting New Orleans is really important to us, of course.
Yeah, and you know what's really good about New Orleans? We have really good air conditioning.
I've noticed. I have a section in my suitcase for sweaters and wraps for those moments where I'm inside. But yeah, it's easy enough to cool off, whether that's by popping inside the hotel lobby or preferably jumping in a pool.
Yeah, that's important these days.
Or drinking a well-iced cocktail.
Have you just sweated through Rome, where all the bars and restaurants have these like ancient fans sitting outside?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the US certainly does air conditioning much better than Europe and the UK. I can still attest to that. I'm caught off guard now. I've been in the US almost 20 years. So anytime I go back, I'm like, oh, that's right.
That's right. England is not air conditioning friendly.
No, and also having a heat wave this summer. My parents keep in touch, obviously, and the Brits love to talk about the weather. So we always know when there's a heat wave. And this year it actually was a heat wave. Often when a British person says a heat wave, it means it's like, in the 70s. But this year it got up to the, 90s, which is really quite intense for anywhere, but particularly somewhere that's not set up for that kind of work.
Sadly, that's happening all over Europe right now and the United States. So, that's why I think spritz is becoming so popular. I think people are reaching for spritzes and these lighter alcohol beverages because they're, it's hot. You just want something to cool you off. So I think that's why it's a even more popular trend right now, not even trend, movement. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. So describe yourself as a cocktail. If you were, you can do it as ingredients or a cocktail, but tell us what you would be or who you would be.
Well, let's see now. Well, since I'm able to, direct this answer myself, I'm going to go for a French 75 because it would make me tall and elegant. And, with a link to New Orleans, which is obviously very important to me these days. But gin at the heart, I'm going to go gin, not cognac. I know that might be controversial, especially for you guys locally. But it's always been my go-to cocktail. I think I love the Hendrick's Gin French 75 when working with the brand. It felt like one of those cocktails where it was never the wrong time to enjoy a French 75. Yes, so that would be my choice, I think.
It's my favorite cocktail as well, French 75. I do tend to do it with cognac. And my favorite one is at the Chandelier Bar. Oh, it's good. With truffle French fries at the Four Seasons New Orleans. Yes. And there's a new-ish place. We've both done write-ups on it called Junebug.
Right.
Great bar program. Yeah, great bar program. Great cocktails. Good French 75.
I actually profiled them in an upcoming column coming out in, I think, a month in Somm Journal.
Yeah.
And
we love it.
They've got a great bar program. They've got a great food program, wine program as well. It's just a fun place.
Very different. And we're putting it in our list of recommendations. We're doing it. We did a little about the museums, and on the connectedtable.com, and then little places we like to go around those places. And Junebug's definitely should be on everybody's list.
I'm putting it on my
interesting
list. The tip.
Yeah, and it's in an old record building. It's in an old building of a record producer. So there's a lot of architectural history.
Oh, fantastic.
So we have come to the end of our thing for is your final toast to everybody? Charlotte Voisey, Executive Director of Tales of the Cocktail Foundation. Why don't you send us off with a final toast?
Well, we are so excited to be back for Tales of the Cocktail this year in 2025. We look forward to seeing everyone and raising a glass, toasting New Orleans and the global cocktail community. So see you at Tales.
Absolutely. Happy Tales to everybody. And always stay insatiably curious and always check back with us, Melanie and David, at the Connected Table. We keep you connected. Thank you and have, chin chin, a great day.